welcome back to another edition of Higher Education Today. I'm your host, Steven Roy Goodman. I'm at Otterbein University in Ohio, where we're going to be speaking about sports sciences. And I've got three guests with me today. Shelley Payne, who's a professor here at Otterbein, in sports sciences and biomechanics, and Ben Shockley, who is a student here at Otterbein, and Sarah Alloto, who is also at Otterbein. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming, and thank you for having me here at Otterbein. Shelley, maybe if we could start with you. What is sports science?
Sure. I always tell students and families when they ask what is sports sciences, it's applied sciences. You know, our subject matter, they're humans, and we get a lot of our research and our studies behind understanding what makes humans work. Our foundation is anatomy and physiology, and then from that point in time, we really grow. And some majors really focus on the dysfunction, the injuries that happen with humans, and kind of understanding the biomechanics of how and why those things happen. That's a focus of what we do in this institute a lot. Other majors within our department focus a little bit more on still humans and sports sciences, but human response to exercise, human response to therapeutic exercise, therapeutic modalities, etc. But again, humans are science, and it's all about the applied sciences.
Well, fair enough. And speaking of the exercise, Ben, you're obviously an exercise student, but I'm assuming you exercise as well.
I do.
And what exercises do you do, and what exercises do you like to study?
So the exercises I perform, I normally weight train about 4 days a week, and then I'll do cardio 3 days a week. And I really just do that to keep my body in shape and to keep myself healthy. Exercise is transformation of the body and the mind, so I think it's a really, really important thing for everybody to get into. And for studying exercise, I'm more into studying the anatomy and physiology side of things, like the physiology, rather than like the movement side of things. I like to understand like what's working internally inside of the body.
And Sarah, how about you? Do you study similar things?
So I would say I like more of the anatomy side of things. I plan to go to grad school after I graduate, and I think just focusing on the physiology side, so the inside thing, but also the bigger movements is kind of what interests me, and seeing how movements can impact a person's health overall, and just from an injury standpoint, how it can put them at a greater risk or a decreased risk for injury.
Well, if we can stay on that for a second, so what would be a bigger movement that you're referring to?
So like you could say a squat would be a bigger movement of the hips and knee. There's a wider range of motion that those joints go through. A smaller movement, you could say, would just be something with the ankle. Like you could look at ankle, the way it flexes or extends within that movement. So within a movement, there are smaller movements as well as bigger movements, all in the single movement.
And Shelley, how did you start teaching students about these things? Because I'm assuming there are some viewers now looking at this saying, wow, that would be interesting for my son or daughter to possibly do. How do these students know all this?
Yeah, the field's really grown. So my undergraduate degree is in athletic training. So, you know, when I was their age, I spent a great deal of time working with athletes, covering sports related events in my undergraduate degree, and really focused on just the injury side of things. Just like themselves, I used that undergraduate degree to go on to graduate school in physical therapy, and that's where I really came to love and understand injury prevention. You know, when you're a physical therapist, you're oftentimes treating the end result of when someone is injured, their season's done, and so that's where my focus really became on thinking about injury prevention, but also performance enhancement. Like, I think there's a fine line between those two things of understanding how you get somebody back from injury, but also how you use exercise and sports sciences to, again, enhance someone's performance. I started being interested in teaching when I was working as a physical therapist and athletic trainer here at Otterbein, and prospective students would come in and they would say, I want to be you. And in reality, that was at a time when a lot of people that wanted to go into careers in health fields just were kind of our standard or typical science majors. Not that you can't do that and, again, go into these related fields, but there was really emerging demand for people that wanted to study what they were interested in. Students that, again, maybe had been athletes themselves, maybe just had an interest in exercise and human performance, and they wanted that to be their passion area. And so that's really where the impetus came for us to kind of build a major within the Health and Sports Sciences department that would suit the needs for students wanting to go into these health-related careers. And it also gives them the opportunity to interact with a wide range of students in our department that, again, are really thinking about careers that range from public health to being strength and conditioning, certified strength and conditioning specialists, to people that want to be personal trainers. And it's just such a wide-ranging field. And I became interested in teaching because I think that there's just so much mobility in these fields and so much demand. It's about taking care of ourselves and thinking about health promotion. You only have one body, and you only have one opportunity to kind of make the best of it and move forward and make your life what you want it to be. And I think that that's really empowering for students to understand. I think it's important for them to have that to take forward in their careers and think about that health promotion.
Well, that's terrific. And if I could turn to you two students here. So how do you balance the tension between, I'm a student, I want to have fun, I want to go partying with my friends, versus taking care of your bodies?
Mm-hmm. Well, I can definitely speak on that. And I've found that going out and partying with your friends, you can have fun with your friends without having to do anything crazy or put anything in your body that would be potentially harmful. You can go just hang out with your friends and enjoy life and still take care of yourself, still go to the gym, still eat healthily, and still have fun.
I think what it comes down to the biggest is just time management. Shelley talks a lot about being a self-directed learner, so just pacing yourself throughout your classes, not waiting until something's assigned, I think has been a big change from high school that definitely higher education is a push towards now. So just being able to do the things you like to do. You could do a study date with your friends. You can go out and get a drink if you wanted to. But at the end of the day, you're in school. So I think school is a very important thing to focus on as well. Because if you don't hang out with your friends and work out and do all the things that you like to do, mentally you're not going to be as focused. So it's just about learning what works for you.
Well, fair enough. And what about going out for pizza? So let's assume, Sarah, you went out with some friends for pizza.
She would love to go out for pizza.
How do you deal with that?
I would say it's just about scheduling ahead. I'm a very big planner. I have my Post-it notes, my calendar, everything kind of in check. So I make sure I get all of my schoolwork mainly done throughout the day, so then the evenings are more free. This semester's a little bit different for me. I'm not taking as many courses, and my classes are more in the afternoon, so I have the morning free, so I'm able to do stuff then and kind of focus on myself then, and then hang out with friends in the evening or on the weekends.
Well, I meant, maybe I'll throw this to all of you, I meant the issue of pizza versus vegetables. So let's assume that, I go to a lot of university campuses, and there aren't a lot of people who say, let's go have a broccoli night. There are pizza nights. How do we deal with that, those social pressures as physical therapists?
Yeah. And I think realistically it boils down to you don't have to be perfect all of the time. You don't have to be 100% strict on your diet all the time. You can't only eat chicken, rice, and broccoli. Everyone knows it's great for you, but that's not the only thing that you can put in your body. It's okay to slack off one day, but the general idea behind it is to have a pattern, a lifelong pattern of eating healthy, of exercising, of building this discipline inside yourself, so that when you do want to have a slice of pizza, it won't be negative to you. It won't be some big bad thing that's going to raise your cholesterol, because your cholesterol is already low. So you can treat yourself a little bit. You can cheat on your diet a little bit, but the goal is to be lifelong and healthy.
I think there are a lot of ways you can go with this. I think that for these guys. And you hit on a great point. Nutrition is also a big aspect of our curriculum, of our department. It's certainly important that thinking about really having that balance and really creating situations in which students are really thinking about creating patterns for themselves while they're here, while they're in their 20-something, and while they've got typically a little bit more leeway than maybe you have when you're in 40s and 50s to take some of those, steps. But I think it's really important for exactly what Ben said, to think about nothing's exclusionary, right? There are no bad foods. We've got to change the narrative on those things. There are things that you shouldn't maybe have every day, right? But there are things, again, that it's about getting back to those patterns. Does my daily pattern include, good macronutrients, good things that, again, are feeding my body well, supporting the things and goals that I might have related to exercise, different training patterns. You know, again, when we think about our athletes in season versus out of season, what's your goal right now? And if what you're choosing nutrition-wise, is that supporting those goals as you work towards those things? But going out with friends, if it's pizza, if it's something else, it's important. You know, these students are definitely in high performance, high demand majors. All college students are, right? And it's important to prioritize their nutrition. It's important to prioritize their studies so that they do attain those goals. But it's also important to make sure that they're surrounding themselves with a good social support system, and they're prioritizing sleep. These careers, and I think for college students and anybody likely, but these guys who want to maybe go into a health-related field, you have patients that are kind of coming into you and oftentimes putting a lot on you, right? They have pain, they have concerns, and if you are taking that home with you and not able to, again, decompress, right, have ways in which you've got good balance, good mechanisms to be stress relieving, whether it's out with friends, making sure my daily exercise happens, reading a book, right, what any of those things happen to be. I hope that as faculty members, we're modeling those things and we're talking about those things, and I hope that these students, because of the chosen field that they're in, are an extension of that within our campus community and to their friends themselves.
You mentioned before the issue of the kind of tension between working hard to make sure you're seeking maximum performance,
Yeah.
and then injury prevention.
Yeah.
So on one hand, we know that you shouldn't jump out of a building. Right. On the other hand,
Sure.
we want students and other people to push themselves when they're playing basketball or any other sport.
Yeah.
Where's that line?
Yeah, so I got into the field way back when because I tore my ACL, right? So the most common injury to female athletes happened to me. I was a freshman in high school. I then had another knee injury as a freshman in college playing basketball, and it led me to where I am, right? I mean, you can never, I guess, all of our things, right, that we choose in our lives lead us to the path where we end up, and mine led me into athletic training and eventually physical therapy. Once I was in a high-volume orthopedic practice, sports medicine, I, of course, happened to be seeing a lot of young females with a torn ACL. It's an epidemic. It's a prevalence. And it's important for us to think about injury prevention. We actually have good research, right? Sarah's research is kind of an extension of that. We have good research that supports that we actually know some things, right? We know some things about how people land, how they jump, how they cut, in particular females, that put them at particular risk. And we also know that there are things that we can do that we can impart as part of their training, right? To think about this injury prevention. So they don't have to be competing. The things that we would do for injury prevention are enhancing, and oh, by the way, they also lead to greater performance. I ran a knee injury prevention program for young females, and it is really tough to sell prevention. Nobody wants to think about their daughter tearing her ACL, right? So when you're trying to sell that, market that, it's like, come see me, you know, don't tear your ACL. But in reality, what ends up being important is for these parents and these young athletes to understand that when they enroll in these types of injury prevention programs, when you have a dedicated strength and conditioning program for 6 weeks, you're going to see change that is, if it's done and designed well, it's going to serve both purposes. It's going to make sure that some of the things that we know you should avoid with regard to injury prevention, but it's also going to support increased vertical jump, right? Decreased kind of time on the ground, which again creates more explosiveness and more power and leads to improved performance.
That's interesting. If I can pivot to something you just said a second ago and bring you into this, Sarah, I think you have something to do with the soccer team here, if I understand that correctly. And I happen to play soccer, but I'm a male. So do male and female soccer players do injury prevention in different ways, or should they?
I would say yes and no. So men and women tear their ACLs sometimes because of different reasons. A woman's just like the way her body is built. Our hips are usually a little bit wider, which then puts your knees a little bit more in. So it's already kind of a predisposition. But I would say they both should do the prevention protocols really similarly. The way you tear your ACL is the same. Your knee can go in, like Shelley was talking about, when you land, if your knee is more straight. So just strengthening the muscles and teaching the athlete how to put their body in a way to prevent those things is very important. What we looked at this summer was how fatigue impacts the biomechanics and just joint kinematics when they land. We did a triple leg hop for distance and a single leg hop for distance, and then just a broad jump basically. So we're just seeing if throughout the course of a game, if fatigue is the impact of these things. We're still in the analyzing stage, so we're not really sure of those results yet. But it seems like through other literature that fatigue is a big impact. So doing the prevention, strengthening those muscles, and just no one wants to think about, like she was saying, that something could happen, but that's kind of what you have to do now. You have to think the beforehand and then prevent it later.
Maybe I'll throw this to all of you. What do you want us to do before we play soccer? So what should we do in the hour before we play?
There's actually soccer is a great example. There's actually great literature support that there's actually just a warm-up program that's been utilized. It's called the PEP program. You can Google it. It's a terrific warm-up that actually has been used in the soccer community. It's targeted at soccer. And to what Sarah's saying, oftentimes it's getting our muscles kind of turned on, right? That they are warmed up, they're ready to go. They're like, hey, we're going to do something dynamic here, like wake it up, right? Particularly for people that maybe are not 18 to 22 and they're still enjoying playing soccer, and maybe you've had a desk job all day and you're going to go out and enjoy a soccer game with your friends. It's important to tell your muscles we're going to do something different now. And so those type of dynamic warm-ups that are used consistently go a long way to promoting motor patterns, which is the way our muscles control our joints, right? So we measured, hey, what joint angles are these soccer athletes landing at, right, and cutting at, and what's happening to them both before and after fatigue. But it really is about the muscle response, right? That why the injury difference between males and females, young and old, et cetera. It is about your muscle's ability to stop your joint from getting into a bad position. And so these warm-up programs, again, that have been shown to be beneficial are things that can easily be incorporated by club teams, by youth soccer teams, any of those things. And that's a great on-the-ground approach to, again, thinking about something that's not going to take more time, right? You're going to warm up somehow anyway. Just do valuable warm-up.
And would that be different for tennis players or athletes who play other sports?
Yeah, the research has specifically looked at soccer and kind of the value of this particular warm-up with soccer in general. That's what it was designed for. We want to think about warm-ups being sport-specific, right? So we want to think about the way in which you are using your muscles. What kind of things are you doing in that particular sport? And so principles are the same. We value dynamic warm-up over just kind of standing in the old circle stretch and just kind of stretching your muscles as you stand there, right? So dynamic warm-up, things like high skips, butt kicks, jogging, getting yourself, kind of warmed up in that way so that we are facilitating good motor patterns and, again, waking those muscles up. But also, again, working with athletic trainers, working with strength and conditioning specialists to make sure that, again, if you have a particular team or you have a kind of question about the sport specificity of your warm-up program, is that important? Is that important to think about? Warm-up typically is just warm-up, right? That as long as we are making sure that people are doing the patterns with their knees that they should be doing and their lower extremities, that's all good. So, yeah.
Fair enough. And in terms of weightlifting, Ben, maybe if you could say a word or two about this, because a number of people bench press, a number of people do push-ups, a number of people do strength training.
Yes.
What would you say to people who are thinking about starting that?
Well, I would always say warm up and cool down. That's my shining star of my whole entire workout plans, because I started off pretty intelligently, I would call it, unintelligently, and I wouldn't warm up, I wouldn't cool down, and my body was just hurting all the time. Like, I had a bunch of different impingements in my shoulders, my knees had problems, and I finally had enough of it. And I looked on YouTube, and I was looked at YouTube, and I was like, why is my body hurting after I'm working out? This is supposed to be something good for me. This is supposed to be helping me, and I'm just hurting. I'm just in pain. So I found that warming up, taking care of your joints, stretching, flexibility, range of motion, all those are primary. Strength and muscle building comes secondary. You have to take care of your joints and your functional movements before you take care of like actually growing and trying to improve in a different weight training program.
But that might be a tough message to deliver to some high school.
Yeah, ego lifting.
Students.
Yeah.
What would you say to those students?
Put your ego in your pocket, you know? You may think that you're the biggest and you're the baddest guy out there, but once your shoulder's torn out and it'll never heal the same. Like she was saying, you only have one body, so we have to take care of it.
We do talk a lot about balance. I always, as spring break approaches, we always seem to get into this unit in one of my classes. Sarah's had it, Ben has not yet, and I said, we think about this, the show muscles, right? So big pecs, big biceps, heading on spring break, abs. Abs are made in the kitchen, right? That's part of nutrition, but not thinking about training the muscles on the other side, right? Your back muscles in the lower body, making sure your hamstrings and your glutes are well trained. So that we're really thinking about having good balance front to back. We're thinking about those deep stabilizing muscles. Again, it's so amazing the resources that so many people have access to. There are so many high schools that employ athletic trainers, strength and conditioning coaches, right? And they have access to those, which has never been the case in the past. Even what Ben said, there's just a lot of resources out there. YouTube, you got to kind of sort, right? But there are a lot of great resources that if people are interested in thinking about, and your Google search is right, lifting safely, lifting so I don't hurt myself. Those are key words, that again are going to bring you a lot of value.
Well, you raised an interesting point there. So if you're a varsity athlete at a college or university, you presumably have access to teams of people who can help you. But what about the regular student who studies sociology or economics
Sure.
and wants to focus on some of the stuff you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if you are a general student population, again, if you have no idea what you're doing, there are just there's just such wide access to certified personal trainers. You don't have to go see one all the time, right? But to see one for a session, to see one for 2 sessions, have something very specific that you're talking about. Oftentimes there are more resources than students think at the college population. Again, even here at a very small Division III liberal arts institution, right? We do have the ability for our students to, kind of come into the athletic training room and ask for a little bit of advice. We have a physical therapist on staff that, again, would be happy to give some advice. We have programs, again, if you're an institution, there are programs like our exercise science and health promotion program at every university, right? So go seek out and go into that department and say, do you guys offer any personal training services? Because again, if there's students that are in the field, they're oftentimes able to provide that at a really no cost or low cost value. So the student that's in the program is getting some value from that, but so is the greater student body. And so I think it's, especially for college students, important to ask those things. And high school athletes, again, same thing. Go at least make a trip into your athletic training room, right, and ask the question, even if you're not a varsity athlete. And guarantee those people are going to be invested in someone that's asking that question, and at least are going to point you to the right direction.
And I did something very similar to what she was saying. So when I first got introduced to weight training, I went to my local community rec center and I signed up with a personal trainer there. And they taught me proper form, how to progress steadily and safely. They taught me how to stretch and everything. And that was really the stepping stone into my weightlifting career. And that's when I fell in love with weightlifting, kinesiology, and all of that. And it's just very, very important to know what you're doing before you do something wrong, because I think doing something terribly wrong and injuring yourself is a lot worse than just seeking out help. Just go to YouTube, go get a trainer, go talk to somebody. Literally any information is better than no information.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to this profession. I think that's what it's such a blossoming, growing profession in the sports sciences that there are just professionals abound that will be face to face. Kind of after COVID, right? Then more and more of these kind of personal trainers, they offer up Zoom consults, right? And that's often at a lower cost. If you're just looking for someone to kind of design a program for you, they want to hear about your goals and what you want to do. Lots of opportunity there. But again, also at local recs, oftentimes at a very low cost.
Sarah, did you want to jump in and add something to that?
I would say it's sometimes scary to reach out and do a personal trainer. Somebody who is just starting out, knows nothing, that can seem really intimidating. For someone who's older or that's in college, you almost don't want to ask for help. Otterbein does have a really cool program. It's called OtterFit, where you can go to these workout classes that are done by students or other people who may not be the highest level of trainer, but they are still learning. Or there's programs within the exercise science program where you go with somebody, they go through a lifting procedure and just kind of show you how to use the machines, because I feel like a lot of the time injury happens because people don't know what they're doing. That can be high schoolers, that can be someone who's older who might have done something when they were younger and they're trying to still do that, but our bodies change as we age, and just learning how to do the things with what your body's at in that state.
Well, that's a great way to end this segment. We've got a minute or two left, and maybe I can just throw this to you, Shelley. Sarah just referred to bodies that age. So for those of us who are not still college students, what specific tips would you give for adults who are still playing sports?
Yeah, they hear me say it all the time. Every day that we are, on this earth, we lose a little bit of our elasticity. And so I think especially the thing that I noticed, once I kind of got into my 40s, was the idea that I have to work a lot more on my mobility, right? So again, finding that stretching program. Do you want to take a yoga class once a week, right? Or find that yoga YouTube, a flexibility 15-minute video. Just be consistent. And so again, that mobility is critical in making sure that you are, as you age, able to do things that you want to do, and make sure that you are, again, maintaining as much mobility through your joints and hopefully preventing injury. I think for people that are aging and they want to start an exercise program, it's really important that you get cleared by your physician and make sure there are no kind of underlying risk factors that you might have from a cardiac standpoint, from anything else that you're dealing with, before you really embark in anything that's cardiovascular fitness, lifting wise. You just want to make sure you get clear.
Well, this was a terrific discussion. Thank you very much. And thank you to Otterbein again for having me. If you would like additional information about the show, please send an email to me at the viewer mailbox at highereducationtoday@topcolleges.com. If you would like to learn more about Otterbein, please go to the Otterbein website, which is otterbein.edu. And thank you for watching. We will continue to bring you quality discussions about important matters in today's college and university world. I'm Steven Roy Goodman, and you've been watching Higher Education Today.